Testing 1, 2, 3. Ready to begin. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Concepts, and this is a webinar today on preparing to build, securing the right land for your ministry, provided to you by Ministry Design Training. The intent is to help you vet the different properties that you're going to consider for your ministry, regardless of where you are in that process. It is our intent to be able to give you the information to help prepare you to deal with the industry professionals and to think through what property you're going to secure for your ministry. And so as we begin today, we're going to look at several things. We're going to talk about your context, your cash, your considerations, and the company that you keep as you go through the process. First, we're going to look at the context, and we're going to talk about three things: your church, your community, and your connectivity. In looking at these, rats. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Concepts, and you're attending a webinar on preparing to build, securing the right land for your ministry. It is our intent to help you prepare to deal with the industry professionals and to gather together the information you'll need to vet each piece of property that you're considering for your ministry. We're going to talk today about four different areas: context, your cash, the considerations, and the company you select to help you vet and secure your new land. As we look at these, it is our intent to help you sort out and sort through the many opportunities or choices you have in your community to purchase land and develop it for your ministry. We're going to talk first of all about the context of your ministry in helping you to understand that if you do not prepare and plan well, you're well nigh impossible for you to be able to spend your money correctly. And as you can see by our project timeline, if you've taken our other webinars, you'll note that these are in there, that they're a part of it. And this chart is to communicate Luke 14, verse 28 to 32. We want you to prepare well and plan well, because as you get past that stage and engage with industry professionals to do the design and construction of your new facility, you lose control after you've released those decisions to the industry professionals. They're now acting on those decisions and carrying out your wishes, and the cost begins to escalate, as you can see by the chart. So if you don't prepare and plan well, it's almost nigh impossible, if you don't prepare well, to plan well. If you don't plan well, to design well. And certainly if you don't design well, you don't build well. If you don't build well, it makes facility management a nightmare. And so we preach to you over and over again to understand the relationship between your control of your decisions and your control of your money, and the timeline as you go through the process, what that's going to do to you. So listen well as we go through these things and talk first of all about your context of your church. We're going to talk about your church, your community, and your connectivity under the thought of context. What I mean by context is where you are geographically, culturally, in every way, congregationally, community-wise, with your church. And you need to have several things in order if you're going to select the right land. The first one is you need to have a complete, thorough understanding of God's vision for your ministry and have packaged it in such a way that you can cast that vision so that it compels and inspires people to take ownership of it, so they will invest their life in your ministry there. If you don't have vision clarity, you need to go back and look at any number of resources on our website at Ministry Design Concepts, and there are 24 different approaches to ministry design, all of them dealing with, in some way, how to approach developing or discovering and developing vision for your ministry. You may say, well, our vision is to carry out the Great Commission, but that needs to be packaged in a personal way that applies to your particular situation so that, excuse me, the people in your church, congregation, and in your community will buy into and take ownership of and invest their life in what you're doing. Secondly, there needs to be mission defined. Exactly what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And to be able to articulate your vision and your mission, and it's based on your values. Having clearly identified vision, mission, and values is critical to you being able to move ahead. Your vision and mission cannot conflict or contradict or violate your value system. Now, without getting into a strong discussion on your values, your core values, and we talk about them being more than just doctrinal views that we have from the scriptures of what we understand about what the Bible teaches theologically and doctrinally, but goes to the values where we have prioritized what is most important to us or what we believe is most important to God. And we have values that drive our mission and our vision. They push everything forward. For instance, I decided many years ago, over 3 decades ago, and understood that every man and woman, boy and girl, is going to live one of two places for eternity. I understand the doctrinal implications of that, but it has been a value system that God believes people are important enough that his redemptive passion forced him, or that wasn't a good word to use, but led him under his value system to provide a way of salvation for us through his Son. Your values need to be identified and clearly articulated because it's going to drive what property you select. From your vision, mission, and values comes your planning, your strategic planning of how you're going to carry out your mission in order to fulfill your vision based in within the framework of your value system, of what you really value. Identifying your values, by the way, is not aspired values of what you'd like to have them be. It is what they really are, and that's why I say identify them as by examining your own ministry and seeing what really drives your church, what is really of value to them, and your core values that you adopt, that you aspire to, should certainly be eternal ones that aren't going to change regardless of your circumstances. The next thing is to have a full understanding of your church code. If you don't know exactly what I mean by this, it's the very essence of who your church is at its core. Then go get Kevin Ford's book, Transforming Church. You can get it off of our website at Ministry Design Concepts. It's there underneath Approaches to Ministry Design under our book reviews. There are other ones there as well, but this one will help walk you through it. Understanding the culture of your church. Again, if you don't understand what we mean by church culture or have an understanding of your church culture, look at Samuel Chan's book on cracking your church's culture code. These will be put on our website. When you purchase this, you'll have these resources laid out in front of you so that you can move ahead. Now, I've also given you another resource to help you as you go through this in the beginning stages to help you. It's a mechanical tool that is intended to help you think through the long-term vision for the piece of ground that you're looking at using. And it also ends up helping you develop what you're going to do on that land. So you hold up the piece of ground and all its specs, the specifications that we're covering today, and your vision for that property, what you want to do on the property, what you want to be on the property, who you want to reach on the property, on and on and on you go. And the document is called the Long-Term Vision for Your Campus. I put it together some years ago, and it is not comprehensive or exhaustive. It's 72 questions with instructions to help you look at every aspect of your building to kind of frame up, write out a document as to what you want to do and what God wants you to do with your vision, mission, values, and strategic plan, taking into account the code of your congregation and the culture of your congregation, so that you can hold up and see if the piece of land matches the context of your church and who you are, what you're called to do, and how you're called to do it. The second thing that I want to talk to you about this is having a full understanding of your congregation in these areas, but leads us to the next one, and that is your community. Your community. And we want to talk about several different things to help you understand and know the community where you're going to select land. You should know it better than the Better Business Bureau and the Chamber of Commerce and your local politician, or even your local business like Walmart or Target or some other large commercial enterprise that goes and spends a lot of money to understand the demographics. Demographics will tell you the typical characteristic of the people in the area: their age, their income, their education, their status, type of occupation, region of the country, or household size. Sometimes it will even tell you whether they're homeowners or renters, what the value of their home is, and whether it's located in an urban or rural location. Demographics, and you can buy these from any number of sources, and we've given you a document, provided you a document with this webinar that's called Demographic Resources, and you can go to the resources and purchase or gain for free off the internet and learn a great deal about the demographics. The second area that goes deeper is that of psychographics. This takes this idea of understanding your community a step further. It includes people's lifestyles, attitudes, opinions, behaviors, where they like to vacation, the kind of interests they had, the values they hold, and how they behave. Sometimes psychographics is referred to as an IAO, which is their interest, their activities, and their opinions. Or it's seen as a compass, a community preference assessment. You can get the psychographics and purchase them from a couple of companies who provide this for ministry, and that's what their interest in, and that's why they produce the information for churches. Mission Insight and Percept Group are both in this resource document I'm giving to you. The next thing is eclographics. This may sound brand new to you, but ecclesia. And so eclographics is a term that we have coined that deals with your churches in your community as to their church affiliations and religious profile of the churches there. You can get an idea of both of the eclographics of your particular congregation, and then look at your community and look at the eclographics as to what type people, if there are certain types and groups, attend what kind of churches in your community. What that is doing for you, in my thinking, is to help you understand the soil quality of your community. Because you're going to be able to go right in and plant seed, or you may find that the soil is not cultivated for seed, and you have to cultivate the soil. A book to help you understand this was written by a former church planter named Ben Arment, and the name of the book is Church in the Making. In that, he thought through what caused him to have the struggles he did, and others that he has known when they've gone to plant churches. He basically asked the question, why would two qualified equally skilled and trained and gifted church planners planning two different churches, maybe across the street from each other, why one would be successful and one would not, when everything is equal by human perspective and investigation. And he talks about the soil quality as a part of this equation, their receptivity to the Word of God and to the idea of planting a church. So go read the book, think through it. Later perhaps we'll do a webinar that will bring all the information to you in capsule form to help you in Shannon's Cliff Notes, if you will. But you've got to understand the context of your community as to the quality of their soil or their receptivity to the idea of a church being on that piece of ground that you're considering in that neighborhood or location, commercial location, residential location, and other. Want to look next at connectivity, and that's pulling your church and the community so that you consider identifying the areas where you have connectivity to the community where you're looking to build your church. And on a particular piece of ground, how do you connect to them? I provided another document for you that I wrote, again, some time ago in helping churches through their building programs that I've called Community Intelligence. In it, it asks 13 questions, and it leads you down through the thought process of identifying areas where you can build bridges or have common interest with the people that you're called to reach within your community. After you've identified that, you've got to answer the question about each piece of property that you consider. How does the location and the property, the physical property itself, fit into your ministry design? Is it going to help you connect with the people God has called you to reach? And if so, how? And will it do it strong enough that you're going to be able to fulfill your vision there? Can you carry out your mission? Can you have sufficient connectivity in your values with the community psychographics and their core values? You're looking to be able to connect with them. If you don't connect, it's okay, but you're going to have to understand that you've got to cultivate the soil and work toward creating receptivity to your church and to the gospel and to be able to connect with the people God's called you to reach. The next thing that we're going to talk about along with your context is your cash. We're going to talk about two areas, affordability and then cost estimates. First, affordability, and we've given you a document to go with this that is a quick affordability tool that looks at two things that we're going to cover in this webinar. The first is how much can you spend. In the tool we've given you, we've asked you how much can you borrow, 2 to 2.5 times your annual giving. How much can you raise, depending upon whether you use a consultant, outside consultant, or you do the project in-house with your current leadership and self-perform it. You take what you can borrow, what you can raise, and the cash on hand, or things, property you can liquidate and turn into cash. You add those three things together and subtract any debt that you currently have to help you understand your maximum affordability. What can you spend? By what you can borrow, what you can raise, how much you have on hand, minus any debt, will tell you that. But you really need to answer the question, how much should you spend? Because how much you can spend and how much you should spend may be two completely different numbers. And you've got to not just mechanically go through and say, we can spend X number of dollars, let's spend every dime of it, which is going to be a temptation because you always usually have a bigger wish list than you do a wallet capability to afford what you wish to have in your ministry. And so as we look at this, you're going to need to also answer the question, what is this going to cost? We want to buy this piece of ground, and we want to pay this much money for it, and you've got to orchestrate together by following Luke 14, verse 28 to 32, what man goeth to build a tower, a house, and does not first count the cost, what king goeth to war and does not count and weigh his ability to win the war. And so when you look at the land, you've got to coordinate it with the total project budget and look at other things along with the land purchase. So in this document we provided for you, we've broken down a quick cost overview tool to help you look at how to match together and count the cost preliminarily as you look at a piece of ground. Can you afford the ground when you're going to have design costs, site development, which, by the way, working with church planners and other churches through the years, when they've gone to buy a brand new piece of ground, they most commonly are alarmed and shocked and maybe appalled at the percentage of the project that is going to be required to develop a piece of ground that has nothing on it. It can have trees, it can have cow pasture, it can have been former farmland, it can have some houses on it, or some other commercial buildings or barns, could have been farmland, so forth and so on. The land development, in doing this preliminarily, you had better stop and look at 35 to 45% of the full development of that property in order to get an idea. Construction, what is the building you're going to build going to cost? FF&E is furnishings, fixtures, equipment, and I put here extras because there are information technology infrastructure and other new technology that is coming along that you may wish to do that might not have been a part of your ministry 3 years ago or 6 years ago. So when thinking of this, you want to think through what you're going to do with your AVL and with other aspects of your ministry there. There are pre-construction costs. You're going to borrow money, most likely, and you're going to have to pay interest only during construction on what you borrow. You're going to have building permits and insurance costs and management costs that are included in your pre-construction. And then a contingency funds. Contingency funds are money that you should set aside for unplanned expenditures and cost increases and emergencies during your construction process. If you're going to build brand new, the rule of thumb is probably 5%. It really depends on the complexity, the scope of your project as to how much to set aside. And this is where industry professionals, as they design your building and price it out and bid it out, look at what you need to do. But to start off with, if you're building a brand new building on brand new land, 3 to 5%, and 3% being the minimum, and even more than 5% for brand new. If you're renovating a piece of existing building, then you probably better look at 5, 10, maybe 5 for new construction and 10 for renovation, or even up to 20% of the total cost as you look at the design costs, site development, construction, FF&E, and pre-construction. Take 5% of that for new construction and 10% of that, maybe 15, but 10% here preliminarily, to set aside for renovation project to cover things that nobody can see coming. You know things may happen, but you don't know what they are. And so you set aside contingencies. In doing this, I want you to look thirdly at considerations. So after you've added up the total project cost preliminarily as you examine it, that we're then going to talk about considerations for the pieces of land, the sites, the parcels of land that you're considering. You're going to vet them. You will get in this webinar a comparison chart that will allow you to ask all the questions as we have collected all the questions and things to consider into one chart for you to look at as much as 5 pieces of ground and grade them. And so as we look at the considerations of your property, we want to talk about your ministry. And overall, you have to examine each piece of ground to help you determine whether it's going to help or hinder the mission of your church. All in all, is it the right piece of land in every way? Is it the best piece of land for your ministry? Suitability. Is it suitable for your ministry? Is it accessible from your location? It's okay to have visibility, but if it's not accessible, for instance, building on an interstate may sound like a great idea until people can't figure out how to get off the interstate and get to your property, and that happens both with churches and with commercial enterprises because I've tried to get to them. Proximity. Is it in a good location that is approximately in the right location to everything that you're trying to do, the people you're trying to reach and the other things that you're doing? Is the proximity right? Is the visibility? Can people see it? And what does it look like when you look off of the property? So as you take this into consideration, is it going to help or hinder your mission? Suitability, accessibility, proximity, and visibility are important aspects that you need to consider when you look at the ministry design of your church. The next thing that we want to talk about is receptivity. Remember I was talking about the soil quality, whether you could go in right away and plant seed because they're going to receive it, they're receptive to it. For your ministry, are your congregation and the community receptive to the idea of you putting your church there? You need to go and investigate that and see how receptive they are. How receptive are the people in your community to your putting your church there? Next is looking at your considerations is your community. Have you examined the traffic flow? Who's driving by? Is your property visible? Is there a lot of traffic? Can they see onto your property? Will they be able to see into your buildings? I had a preacher friend of mine probably 15 years ago tell me that windows in your church building help people who drive by your property and see into your windows already feel like they've been inside your window because they could see into your window. We may not think much about it because we go to our church all the time, walk into it, but we know what's on the other side of the wall. Guests do not. So visibility and quantity. When you look at the traffic flow, is it on people's way to and from work, to and from recreation, to and from shopping, to and from their families? Why are they coming by, and can they see onto your property? I've had churches that I know of or have helped that instead of putting their church on a 6-lane or 7-lane road, they put it on a 2-lane road. Instead of having the property open where you could see it and know that it was there as you drive past it, they allowed forest to be in front of it, and you had to drive up a long driveway before it opened up in front of them. Now, I'm sure they had their reasoning to that, but you want to think through what your philosophy is when it comes to your visibility to the community. What is the planning by the Planning Commission and future expansion and growth projections of your area? Is the traffic going to increase as time goes on over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, or is it projected to go down? So you want to look at city planning, county planning, future expansion around your area. If you're buying a piece of farmland, is there land developers that are planning on building houses around you, or a theme park, or an industrial chemical plant, what are the plans? You want to look at the demographics of the passing traffic. Is there connectivity of your church to your community as they're driving past you? Frontage. When you look at your frontage, is there more than one way in and out of the property? Are there safety issues? Are you going to have to put in deacceleration and acceleration lanes? Are you going to be required in some way to park across the street? Are there any other safety issues as you investigate the pieces of ground that would affect your care and your shepherding of your people? And so as you look at this, you need to think through how much frontage. Is it enough? Are you buying property that's hid behind other property and you have no visibility, and maybe there's only one way in and one way out? My wife and I have been doing a research and development project by visiting other churches around the southeast, and we went to one that had 3 services Sunday morning with thousands of people coming to each service, and they had one way in and one way out. Traffic was lined up to get onto the property and to get off the property. It's a lot of traffic bunched together and moving quickly can become a hazard just walking to your car, particularly if you've got 2 children in your stroller, one in your arms and one holding your wife's hand, and just put your own scenario there. I think you need to consider what it's going to do and how it's going to work. Your neighbors. Or you want to be a good neighbor, but are they? What kind of neighbors are you going to have? Who's going to be sitting next door to you? Noise and other pollution. Are you going to be next to a manufacturing plant or a ball field that has people driving in and out, a lot of noise Sunday morning, and other times that you're doing key ministry there where you need to have control of the environment to worship or to educate or to fellowship or even to recreate, that you've got to look at noise pollution and other pollution. I was reared in a city where the paper mills were very strong, and you had the noise of the factories and the aroma from those factories. Stop and consider what noise and other pollution are going to invade the property. Community development and the cost. Are you going to be required to take part in the community development and put time and resources and money into it? Understand what's happening around the community and what posture they take toward you as you buy that piece of land and develop it for your ministry. What impression does the property make on the community? If you build there, is it going to help them and make them want to come to it? What are they going to think of you and of the Christ that you represent? Aerial views. Stop and look at the community. Get an aerial view of it so you can get a bird's eye view from 4,000, 8,000, 10,000 feet. Looking down on your property just is good to know what is there. Walk the site. Drive the area. Interview people. Talk to people. Go find out what your neighbors are thinking. Attractiveness. If you're going in there and for your church you're going to build metal buildings, but everybody around you that you're going to be connecting with to reach with the gospel is living in bricked homes that are high-end quality, and you're building very functional but really low-end buildings, you need to know whether or not that's going to be an obstacle or an asset or a liability to your efforts to reach them. Attractiveness. Does it meet your standard of excellence when it comes to the level of attractiveness that you have in mind for your ministry? Is it going to help you, or is it going to hurt you? Along with the community is looking at the technical considerations, and this is going to be broken down into multiple areas for you, and I'm also giving to you documentation that goes with this in 3 different forms. So there's 8 documents altogether that you received today, along with other resources for you to link up and be able to purchase the different books that we've mentioned. We're going to give you 3 resources, documents to go with this. There is a short list that we're going through right now that deals with the technical. There is a long list that's 9 or 10 pages that gives you explanation, examples, and illustration, and questions as they go through the different technical and ministry aspects of vetting a piece of property. The third one is the comparison. So you've got the checklist that we're going through during the webinar, the long form one that's more exhaustive and comprehensive, and then a 2-page checklist to help you compare up to 5 pieces of property. In looking at the technical aspect, we're going to look first at the physical attributes of the piece of ground that you're considering. In the size of the property, does the usable acreage meet your long-range ministry design? For instance, a usable acre of land will, by rule of thumb, accommodate 100 to 125 people. But this rule of thumb is, and how many people each acre will accommodate on the piece of ground you're looking at, is determined by your ministry design. How many people can the land accommodate at one time? Is the land big enough to allow your vision to be fulfilled on it? Next is adjacent property. Is there additional land to purchase if needed? One of my friends bought an amount of ground, and they asked the owner to split it in half or in 3 parts, and they retained legally the first right of refusal so they could buy the land but not be forced to buy it up front, because it would have made them land poor and they couldn't have developed the new buildings and parking and developed the property to move their church onto it. And lo and behold, someone came along and bought another third of that land, and they had to go ahead and buy it because they had first right of refusal. So they would have to reject the purchase of 1/3 that was available but not purchased up front. If you understand what I'm saying, you want to know if you're going to be landlocked. What about accessibility? Is the site easily accessible? If not, can it be fixed? And what will it cost? Sometimes acceleration and deacceleration lanes are required. Can people safely turn into and get onto your property? And I would suggest that you have more than one way for them to get in and out of your property, and you need to know the speed limit, the density of traffic as it is coming past your property at different times of the day and the different days of the week. But accessibility. Next are utilities. Are they available? Electric, gas, sewer, water, etc. And what will it cost to bring them to your property? Is the setting right? Can you locate your facilities, your parking, your ball fields, everything that you want to do on that property over a period of years? Can you locate them on the property to meet your needs for visibility, traffic flow, parking, safety, and weather? Is it the right setting? Can you do on that property what you want to do and believe God would have you do on it? Next, considering the technical aspects and considerations of your property is the regulation requirements. And first is zoning. What is the property zoned? What will it cost in time, money, and other resources to rezone it for your church? Will you have to rezone it? What are the implications on how it is zoned? Covenants. Are there any restrictive covenants? If they exist, how might it hinder the development of your property? For example, height restrictions. If you're going to put a steeple or some bell tower or some other 3 or 4 story building on your property, are there height restrictions that are in the covenants that you're going to have to follow and that may hinder you doing what you want to do on your property? The building appearance or materials that are used. It may say that you can't have a metal building or a stucco-sided building, or that you cannot have a metal roof, or that you have to have it match the appearance of things that are around it. Know the covenants, title exceptions, and easements. Is the property free of these two things? If they exist, how will they impact your ministry? Will it make some portion unusable? Local ordinances. Have you considered any local ordinances that will impact your ministry? Meaning green space, landscaping, signage, setback restrictions. All of these are possible local ordinances that will impact what you're allowed to do on that piece of property. Here's one, impervious coverage. Is there an impervious coverage ratio? And if so, what is the ratio and the implications on the future development of your property over the years? Let me explain to you what this normally means. It means that you cannot put paving or concrete, asphalt, concrete, or shingle over more than a certain percentage of the total acreage or square footage of your property. So if your property is zoned in a certain way and you can only develop 25% of the property, it's going to limit how many cars you can park and how many first floor, one-story buildings you can build, and other ways that you might cover it up. Because when the rains come down and the snow comes down and the sleet and the hail comes down, they want the land to be able to absorb it and restrict and control the runoff. So it has to do with how you handle precipitation. That's impervious coverage. You need to know what it is. And if you don't, and we're giving you another document to go with this, that is a list I put together some years ago again for churches as they go through the master planning of potential property, they need to answer at least 23 questions about that property so that your industry professionals understand what the impervious coverage is, what the local ordinance are. Identify any easements and title exceptions. Look and understand fully the implications of covenants and certainly know how the property is zoned so that you don't pay to have an industry professional design a master plan that won't fit the property because there are rules against it or regulations or codes against it. You need to know, secondly, the environmental issues. Are there any wetlands that are a part of your building? One church I worked with in the Northeast had 15, 20 acres of land, but only 5 to 7 of it were usable land, usable acreage. Fortunately, it was on the front part of the building, of the property, but it limited what they could do because they had schools and camps and other outreach and community service organizations as a part of their ministry. They had to break up all these different ministries to other locations because the acreage they bought ended up they couldn't develop it. You need to know if it has wetlands there, if it is in a floodplain, and if there are any hazardous materials. Let me also mention this about environmental issues. When it comes to having X number of usable acreage, say you're buying 10 acres and they tell you there's only 5 usable acres on it, you need to know with those 5 acres if they're together. Because it has happened where churches have looked at land and been told there's only 50% of it is usable. Here's 10 acres, 5 of it is usable, developable land that you can park on, play on, and worship on. And you come to find out that 1 acre is in the northeast corner, another was in the southeast corner, and another acre is in the northwest corner, and the southwest corner is 1 acre in dead middle of the property. How is that going to help you? There's a usable acre in every corner and 1 in the middle. As you can see, that would be a bad piece of ground for you to buy under reasonable thinking or normal use. Protected wildlife. I've been involved as a church builder with the National Church Building Company that they've found protected wildlife on the property, and a $4 million project couldn't move ahead. They never developed the land because of 1 animal that was there, and they did not vet the property to uncover this potential hindrance to your moving ahead. You need to know it before you buy it. Another area is geographic concerns, topography. How does the land go up and down? Subsoil conditions, what's under the ground. So topography is measuring, and you should probably have your survey done in 1 foot increments. So for every foot of change in the elevation of the property, the topographical survey will show that. Your subsoil conditions is that you need to understand as best you can and do soil borings, soil testing, where you plan to put your first building. It has to be able to hold it. What about the drainage patterns on your property and the drainage of water coming from other properties onto your property? It can be very expensive to try and change those. Another technical area is permitting process. Special code requirements. Will your ministry be exempt from any specific local code compliance requirements, sprinkler, access for handicap, etc.? If not, what will these special requirements cost? Public hearings. Will you be required to hold public hearings? If so, who will represent you? Architects, attorneys, engineers, specialists? What will this cost in time and money? Impact and development fees. What is this going to cost you? Are you exempt from the fees associated with sewer systems, water drainage? If not, what is the estimated cost of that? Because the government can charge you fees for these. Another technical aspect is to consider as you go to make an offer on a piece of ground, what are possible contingencies that you should consider putting into your contract offer to a seller? Subsoil conditions. You say, does this happen? Yes, it does. Where you buy it, then you go test the soil. And one of the churches my wife worked with as an interior designer, the church found after it bought the property, after it had started construction, after they were doing the site work, that they had to spend $50,000. Fortunately, they had contingency money set aside to blast out boulders and rock where they were going to put part of the building in the parking. Subsoil conditions, you need to know and make it a contingency as you go through to test it. Zoning. You're going to get it changed. Can you get it changed? You have to go sometimes before the Board of Zoning Appeals. I've had to do it as a pastor. Environmental concerns. Traffic studies. Utility availability and cost. Don't just assume that you can put a septic tank and drill a well to provide for your facility needs and ministry needs there. Know what the rules are and nail it down, but you need to know and have in this offer restrictive covenants and cost. You're trying to cover yourself with the areas that we're mentioning so that you don't end up having to buy it because they accepted your offer and you didn't put the right contingencies in there that allowed you to back out of the purchase. Consider avoiding the following: wetlands, floodplains, severely sloping land. I violated this as a senior pastor, and to my defense, I was in my mid-20s when we bought it, but we bought 3 acres of land up on a hill, and I learned afterwards that from the highest point to the lowest point of the property was 40 feet. Parking 200 cars on that 3 acres, trying to get 400 people in there, was a severe challenge to us the entire time that we owned the property. Unfavorable subsoil conditions. If you can't put the building there, or you're going to have to use pier pilings or some kind of special foundation, are you going to have to muck it and pull out the muck and replace it with new soil? All of these are things that you want to know up front and count the cost. You're just following Luke 14. Large setbacks. Setbacks normally come in 25 or 50 feet off for certain areas. Others may be less or more, but you want to know what the setback restrictions are because you can't build inside of them without an exemption, without getting and winning an appeal to do so. Easements that cut the property into unusable portions. You can't build under or over power lines. So what is that, or sewer lines? What does that mean? You need to know if they have easements and they have right-of-way through that, you have to build and work around it. Limited frontage for entrances and exits. Oddly shaped properties. These are things that you need to consider as you look at the technicalities of your property. Next is to consider is that of the company that you need to put together to help you do your due diligence. So consider the following as a part of your due diligence when investigating property you are seriously considering. You need to go look at that property and ask for recent surveys, boundary and topographical surveys. Know what you're getting. I heard just last week, not a church, but a company that bought a piece of a land with the building on it, and they didn't vet it correctly, and their building ended up being on somebody else's property. That happens. Know what you've got. Soil testings. Perform soil borings in the areas you plan to build. So that's going to require surveyors and soil testers and civil engineers that should be able to set both of the soil testing and the surveys up for you. But why not have a civil engineer examine and analyze the code and the land for you? The codes, the legal codes, and the land itself to help you vet the property. And to put together some preliminary cost estimates from what you've told him you want to do on the property. Try to identify anything that would cripple your process and your progress up front while you're vetting the property. Involve these folks in the process. It's better to spend a little money on the front end, in my thinking, and keep from having a catastrophe. It's risk aversion. You're trying to avoid buying a bad piece of land. Have your architect also analyze the codes and do a preliminary master plan review. When they look and start to put down the parking in blocks and the building in blocks and the detention pond in a block on this piece of ground, and they look at phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 over the years that you're going to develop the property, does it have the bandwidth? Is it set up? Does it have the capabilities and capacity to allow you to fulfill your vision that God has given you, His vision for your ministry? Can you carry out your mission? Will in any way your core values be violated by the property? Will your game plan, can it be carried out on this property? And an architect can look at this for a set of money and help you consider it. Have a contractor, a church builder, somebody who understands not only commercial construction, but understands church, to give you a cost estimate for the first phase that you're going to build in your master planning. What's the first building and first parking and other things that you're going to put on the property, and have them give you a cost estimate. The architect and the civil engineer are designers and very gifted people, but I have found that it really helps to have builders who've got their hands in the dirt and are actually putting the building together and doing the site work, to have a site grader and a building contractor come in and help give you site estimate, cost estimate, and construction estimate for the facility, that they can bring great value to protect you up front before you ever buy the property. Secondly, the contractor serves as a second set of eyes. They can help you immensely as you consider all the different ramifications. The Bible teaches in the multitude of counselors there is safety. So involve these people on the front end as you start to go look for the property. And yes, I know you're going to spend some money, but it's money you spend in due diligence that preserves the future of your ministry, because you're protecting your money, the Lord's money, your ministry, the Lord's ministry, and your momentum, the momentum that God has generated in your ministry. Failure to do this can lead you to lose money, ministry, and momentum. Attorneys to review the contracts, to do title searches, to look into the easements and the other areas. Have your legal counsel protect you legally through the process. A realtor who develops the contracts, who puts in the contingencies, who deals with negotiations of price and other things, that you would do well to keep company with these individuals as you go to look at a piece of ground. Here's another area that I give to you as a guy who's pastored for years and helped churches both in the United States and other countries build their buildings, buy their land, and so forth. That you want to remember to keep company with the Lord as you go through your process. You bathe it in prayer. As you talk to Him, you wait on the Lord and you listen to Him. You can go through all the mechanical aspects of the things that I've given you. You can engage with all the industry professionals and do everything right and completely miss God's will for selecting the right land for your ministry. Thou shalt not go through the process without making it a spiritual journey where you understand and agree that you are in desperate need of God to be successful in His eyes. May the Lord give you great wisdom as you go through the process of vetting the property and selecting the right property for your ministry. You can reach us further at marshall@ministrydesignconcepts.com or at our phone number to our office, 864-977-1632. All of this is on the website, ministrydesigntraining.com, to help you go further with your study as we look at how to secure the right land for your property. Thank you very much for listening. Be sure to download all the documents and resources that go with today's webinar.